It is a week after the 2024 NFL Draft officially concluded. So today I'm going to be answering your questions surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers about a week removed from the NFL Draft here. It's pretty some interesting stuff here. Cut candidates, trade rumors, all these different things that are floating around in your brains here. Can't wait to get your questions here and answer them. But before we get into it, make sure you click that subscribe button to join the most interactive Steelers community here on YouTube. We have a weekly live show every single Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where you guys can get your questions on these mailbags here every single week. Really do appreciate all of your support. And with that, make sure you click that subscribe button, and I'll pause and open it up for questions, starting with a $10 super chat from DJ KJ. He says, do you think Tomlin will use Russell Wilson and Justin Fields as a rotational quarterback? The answer to that question, DJ, is yes, I hope so. Okay, obviously Russell Wilson is probably going to be your number one starting quarterback unless he absolutely craps the bed in training camp, which I don't see happening. And, Justin, I think, is going to have a package, whether it's, just short yardage and he's kind of just like the tush-push quarterback, or what I would actually do is I would have a couple packages where Russ is the quarterback, Justin comes on as kind of like a running back option or something like that. And then you also have, Calvin Austin III out there, and you have Jaylen Warren on the other side of Russell Wilson. You can do some very interesting stuff with options, with reverses, with all these different things, trick plays, if you have two guys that can pass the football. And by the way, Justin Fields has a cannon on him. So if you kind of simplify things for him, especially in the trick game, I definitely think you can make some explosive plays and come up with some really creative ideas with a guy like Justin Fields on your roster. So to answer your question there, DJ, I hope Arthur Smith has a trick up his sleeve or two. Then we got one from my man Damian O'Roy here. Says, should the Steelers go after DK Metcalf, I'm believing is what he's asking there, from Seattle, or Deebo from the 49ers? Who would fit best? I think they would both fit well. The thing about Deebo that I'll say is it gives the Steelers a flavor that they don't have a whole lot of right now. Most of the people on the Steelers wide receiver room here on their depth chart are true deep threats, all right? George Pickens is a deep threat. Calvin Austin III is a deep threat. Van Jefferson is a deep threat. Roman Wilson is a deep threat. I think I would probably go with Deebo, if I'm being honest with you, because I think he'll be cheaper than DK in a trade, and he brings you that yards after the catch ability. And we know George Pickens has that as well. But outside of him, Van Jefferson really doesn't do that. That's not Roman Wilson's game. Calvin Austin III, maybe, but Deebo Samuel is arguably the best run-blocking wide receiver in football, and with the ball in his hands in space, it's absolutely electric. So I would love Deebo Samuel. I don't think it would cost all that much to go get him in terms of trade compensation, and I think that he'd be an awesome Pittsburgh Steeler. Then we got one from Patrick Starr here. Says, I keep hearing that the Steelers want DK Metcalf. Any chance that actually happens? So if it happens, Patrick, it's going to happen post-June 1st. And the reason for that is that if Seattle trades DK Metcalf before June 1st, they take on a $15 million dead cap hit if they do so. But after June 1st, if they trade him, it goes down to like 7.5. Okay, so if they want to trade him, it only makes sense to wait until after that June 1st mark. And if the Steelers still haven't traded for a wide receiver at that point, if they still haven't signed a number 2 wide receiver option, absolutely. If Seattle wants to deal him, I know the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be on the horn trying to get something done there with John Schneider in Seattle. Now, let me know down there in the comment section, will the Pittsburgh Steelers trade for a wide receiver? And if so, which one? Let me know down there in the comment section for today's pinned comment. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. And when that happens, take advantage of that time by answering today's pinned question by letting me know which wide receiver you want the Steelers to trade for. Okay, now we got one from Lane Ewing here. He says, is Roman Wilson a viable number 2 wide receiver option? And if so, what do you think his ceiling is? Good question, Lane. I think that he is a legitimate, viable number 2 wide receiver option. And I do believe Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator, sees him that way because in his post-draft press conference when they drafted Roman, of course, in round 3 last week, he said that they see him as somebody that can play on the outside and on the inside. So even though he played mostly in the slot at Michigan, they see him as somebody that can be a viable number 2 receiving option. And if you ask Roman, he said this last week as well, he sees himself as a number 1 option, okay? So I do think that he's capable of reaching that. I think that, maybe number one, like true alpha type number one, maybe isn't in his future. But hey, as a legit number two option that's really good in the slot, going to be a deep threat, really reliable hands, really crisp route runner. I mean, he's going to be a really solid number two option. I think he's going to be that right away for the Pittsburgh Steelers and Russell Wilson. Then we got one from Pickens 14 Goat here. Says, do you think we should bring in Frank Reich to improve our offensive coaching system? No, I believe in Arthur Smith. And if you saw what Frank Reich did with the Carolina offense last year, what makes you think he's going to be able to fix what the Pittsburgh Steelers have? I think Arthur Smith is a much more reliable type of mind there. He's younger. I think he's more well-respected around the league, honestly. He had multiple teams trying to hire him after he got fired from Atlanta, and the Pittsburgh Steelers were the beneficiary of Arthur Smith wanting to come here, which is something that I'm very excited about. I'm a big fan of Arthur Smith. I think he knows what he's doing, and I think he's going to turn things around offensively for our Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, before we get to the rest of the questions today, check out our friends at Prize Picks. You can go to prizepicks.com/CLNS or download the Prize Picks app today and use our code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100 today. And listen, guys, Prize Picks has specials for new and returning users alike for the start of the MLB season. And even though football season's been over for a while now, the action on the diamond is just heating up. And you can get in on the excitement with our friends at Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your baseball knowledge into serious cash. That is, if you know ball. This is going to be my Prize Picks projection for tonight's MLB action. Pretty much what they have is on their app or on their website there. They've got a bunch of different players, and they've got a bunch of different stat projections. All you got to pick is more or less. It really is that easy. And if you know ball, you can be walking away at the end of the night with some additional cash. So the 2024 MLB season is now off and running, and you can pick more or less right now to make some money from the comfort of your couch while you watch your favorite team play. Prize Picks is super simple. Like I said, guys, all you have to do is pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and then watch the winnings roll in. You can get started now if you haven't already at prizepicks.com/CLNS or download the Prize Picks app today and use our code CLNS for a first-time deposit match of $100. You can pick more or you can pick less. It's that easy with our friends at Prize Picks. Then we got one from Christian Andujar here and says, where would you power rank the Steelers after the draft? I say number 12. So I don't have a list of teams in front of me there, Christian, but I definitely think that they are a playoff team, and I think that they're going to compete for the division title. I think they're going to win somewhere around 11 to 13 games next year, and I think Russell Wilson has the playoff experience and the clutch ability to potentially win you a football game, and if you can win a game in the playoffs, you can probably win multiple games in the playoffs as well. So I guess we'll just have to see where Lady Luck has the Steelers going here in 2024. But I think with Russell Wilson here, this team is capable of doing some really good things, and they could be a top 5 team or top 10 overall team in the National Football League. Then we got on from Thomas Ricks here. He says, who's going to be the third starting corner for the Steelers this year? Could they bring back Cam Sutton? Absolutely, they could. They met with him a couple weeks back. I think the Steelers are probably waiting on if the NFL is going to suspend him. And if not, it's a misdemeanor battery charge. It's not a felony assault charge. And the state investigation in Florida didn't find any evidence to support the charge of a felony assault in the domestic incident that he was a part of. Running away from police from 3 weeks isn't a good look, especially when it's a domestic assault charge. But, you know, at the end of the day, man, he played really freaking good in this defense a couple seasons back. Didn't have a great season last year, so I guess we'll just have to see where the Steelers are at here. I do think that there's some good cornerback options out there, including Cam Sutton, so it'll be interesting to see how the Steelers address that third cornerback spot. Now, what would you do? Let me know down there in the comment section. Would you bring back Cam Sutton if you had the opportunity to do so? Give me a yes or a no. Keep in mind here as well, Sutton is going to be pretty darn cheap if he ends up coming here, just because I don't think he has many other suitors at this point in time. So you get a good corner for a low price. Let me know what you guys are thinking down there in the comment section. Then we got on from Lane Ewing, who says, is Roman Wilson a viable number 2 option? And if so, I think we got this question already, Chug. So we got to TJ here. Do you think Khan could package Dan Moore and Isaac Seumalo or James Daniels and maybe a future draft pick for a stud wide receiver? Absolutely yes. I've been seeing this rumor being thrown out there because you just drafted Mason McCormick, who I think could play in the National Football League right away. Now, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, maybe you want to hold on to those guys because you like the depth that you have. Right now, the Steelers arguably have the best depth along the offensive line out of any team in the National Football League, and you've got an option for the future here. So James Daniels is a free agent in 2025. I don't think they would re-sign him because they have Mason McCormick waiting in the wings now. And Dan Moore, of course, is a backup. So if a team wants him, maybe he can be included. I think that all options are on the table here in terms of the offensive line depth for the Pittsburgh Steelers, sending them elsewhere. It's going to be interesting to see what a potential trade package looks like for a number 2 wide receiver. Then we got Omar's burner here. He says it'll be Aiyuk, and Dan Moore will be involved in the deal. Omar is all about adding him for more than 2 months. I could see it happening. Do the San Francisco 49ers want Dan Moore Jr.? I think I'd probably rather have him than Colton McKivitz, who freaking stinks as well. But honestly, it's not that much of an upgrade, so I honestly don't know how much Dan Moore moves the needle in a potential trade for Brandon Aiyuk. And I think the 49ers actually want to keep Brandon. He's their better wide receiver he's their best receiver on their team. He was an all-pro last year. He obviously has great chemistry with Brock Purdy. I think they'd rather trade a Deebo Samuel of the two. Then we got one from Eric Downs who says, has your Steelers 2024 record prediction changed after seeing the Steelers draft class? So I think it's a great draft class. Steelers are kind of notorious for not wanting to play their rookies relatively right away. I think for sure Roman Wilson is going to play soon just because they have to. They don't have the wide receiver depth. There's a report today that Dan Moore Jr. might play at left tackle to start the season and Fautano might start the bench. I just don't think that's going to happen. But with the Steelers, you never know. We know Mike Tomlin likes to sit these rookies. But at the end of the day, guys, I think that the Steelers are going to be a damn good football team. You guys know how I feel about Russell Wilson. I think it's a perfect fit here in Pittsburgh. I think he can be kind of like a version of the Seattle Russ, playing behind a good run game, really good defense, great head coach, play clutch football. I think Russ is more than capable of doing that at this point in his career. And I think the Steelers could win, up to like 13 games this year, somewhere in between that 11 and 13 range. Now, predict it for me down there in the comments section. How many games will the Pittsburgh Steelers win in 2024 with Russell Wilson leading the way and this new crop of Steelers rookies coming up? Let me know down there in the comments section. I'm going to say somewhere between 11 and 13. Let me know your guess down there in the comments section. Then we got a couple more questions here. This one's from Let's Go Sports. Says, will Muth return in 2025? I think so. I think it's going to depend on his fit in the Arthur Smith offense because Arthur wants these tight ends to be able to block. And Muth is not the best blocker in the world. This is one of the big reasons why Kyle Pitts was such a big failure in this Arthur Smith offense because he's not a blocker. He's just kind of like a big receiver. And Muth is a better blocker than Pitts is. So I'm optimistic that it's going to work. Obviously, he's had all offseason to adjust his game and really work on his blocking. So it's going to be interesting to see how Muth evolves throughout this year's offseason heading into next year. And if he can develop into a good blocker, we know he's a great receiving option over the middle. I'm hopeful that he gets a long-term deal done here in Pittsburgh because it sounds like Muth wants to stay, and it sounds like the Steelers love him. So hopefully they can come together on a deal that's going to work for everybody. And honestly, man, I think maybe Darnell Washington hopefully can get some good stuff going as well in the tight end room. Then we got one from Easy E here. It says, do you think Payton, I think he's talking about Payton Wilson there, will solidify the linebacker room? Yes, absolutely. Right now you got 4 good inside linebacker options in there. Okay, you got Patrick Queen, who is your every down stud. You got a Landon Roberts, who's your great blitzer and run defender. Cole Holcomb, hopefully he can be a rotational piece this year and kind of come back from that injury and have a good season. And then also you've got Payton Wilson coming in here, who I think is a really talented player. He's had some injury issues in the past, but he's really good in coverage. I think he's going to be more of like your third down type of guy because Landon Roberts isn't the best in coverage. In fact, he kind of stinks in coverage. So in those very obvious pass-heavy downs, you don't want a Landon Roberts out there as a liability in coverage. That's when I think Payton Wilson comes in. And I think Wilson has the skill set to potentially replace a Landon Roberts in the starting inside linebacker room eventually. Roberts is a free agent in 2025. So if they think Wilson is ready to be a every down inside linebacker and take his place heading into 2 seasons from now, I think that's going to be the big question for Wilson heading into the year. Then we got one from Light Up Production, says, if Najee doesn't return, will Warren be number one? You'd assume so, unless they get like a really big name running back in free agency, or if they get drafted another running back in round 1, God forbid. It certainly seems like Warren would be the number one option. He's awesome. You can make an argument he's the number one option right now. I think he is overall a better player than Najee Harris. I think the numbers back that up. He makes people miss way more often. His acceleration is way better. I think his long speed is better. He's a better receiver. And he's a dog as a blocker as well in pass protection. So is Najee. But, I just think that Jalen just brings another level of juice and electricity to his game that Najee just simply hasn't shown to this point in his career. Najee's great to pound the rock, get short yardage and, lower the shoulder and all these different things. It's not like I don't like Najee, but I really like Warren, and I think he is a future number one back in the league. Then we got one from TJKJ, $10 super chat, says, which rookie do you feel like is going to have a breakout year? So out of the guys on there, out of the guys that I think are going to have the best year, it's either going to be Troy Fautano or it's going to be Roman Wilson, or it could be both of them, because I think Fautano is ready to play right away. I think he's going to be awesome in this scheme. And then Roman Wilson is somebody that, as a rookie, I think he's ready to play right away in this system. He's a good run blocker. He's got really reliable hands, crisp route runner. He's going to get open against man coverage in the slot. I have no qualms and no concerns about either one of those guys. And, I think Payton Wilson and Zach Frazier will play well too, but I really think the studs from this class, at least in year one, are going to be Troy Fautano and Roman Wilson, the wide receiver. That'll be it for this week's mailbag, guys. Really do appreciate all of your questions. If you want to have your voice on next week's Steelers Talk mailbag here, you can check out the Steelers Talk live show next Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Really do appreciate all of your support. And until next time, here we go, Steelers.